Yo, what's up guys, welcome to a new video on my channel. I'm just gonna completely be honest. I said last video that we were gonna talk about the sister company in the first video of January. Well, that's not gonna be the case. We had some issues. We didn't really find what we wanted, so we decided to put it on hold and revision it later on. There's no date for it. Did manage to get some progress onto it, and just in general we made a website and 85% functional, which is at least some good progress, but we didn't really find the right suppliers for the products we wanted to sell. The problem is that we don't really have a set audience right now which is willing to purchase something. We don't want to take the risk of buying a huge stock and needing to send it physically ourselves, because that's so much time that takes away from development, especially if it's not going to be profitable. Then yeah, that's not really the best risk to take. It took away too much time from the actual project, which resulted in us getting behind schedule a bit, so we decided to just postpone it. Now the actual meat of the video, we have actually decided this week. I made a presentation and I pitched to the team my vision of the weapon system, and everybody kind of was agreeing with what I was saying, and we're now on the same page. So we're actually going to start creating it in game, which is still a learning curve for all the current developers on the team, so it's gonna take a while probably, because I have a specific vision which I will go into during this video. So first I'll just go on about the plugins features. Plugin features. So first we'll be talking about the weapon categories. Kind of obvious, we want each weapon type to have their own category. Then we'll be talking about how we will be able to distinguish them in terms of internal IDs, like how do we make sure people do not dupe the items, because that's definitely very important. Then the damage types. Each weapon will have a damage type corresponding to the native realm. It's a little bit more a loose system, but I'll explain it further in the video. Then the weapon rarities and weapon levels and the requirements you need to have to equip those weapons. Then catalysts. If you're familiar with Destiny, all of the exotic weapons, not all of them, but most of them, have a catalyst which enhances the specific special perk of that weapon. We will have a similar system and a perk system, how we will make each weapon unique and be able allow players to customize their experience with the weapons. So weapon specializations, this is a system kind of like MCMMO, where you can choose a weapon category that you specialize in, which is not something that we're gonna focus on. It's gonna be at the end of the weapon system, because we need the basics first before we can focus on that specialization stuff. Yeah, how are we going to balance those weapons? Because that will probably be the most difficult part in general, especially if we want to take PvP into account, which we won't in season 1. Then drop categories, like where can you get specific weapons from loot drops from the world or specific activities, stuff like that. And then lastly, weapon skins, how will we approach that? Weapon categories. So we want to aim for 4 distinct main weapon categories. We might add some more in the future, but that's not really what we plan to do anytime soon. So light weapons, heavy weapons, magical weapons, and ranged weapons, which will have a weapon type, meaning in my terminology in how I designed it is just like a sword or a dagger. Like the swords and daggers will be the weapons we will focus on for the light weapons. Then we have axes, or maybe something around the pickaxe kind of hammer style. We're not 100% clear on what we will take for Mandikalia. That would be the main realm we would focus on for heavy weapons. And of course, Caderion, they have staffs, or maybe we'll do wands, but I think we'll probably do the staffs. And then we have bows and crossbows for the ranged weapons. Each weapon category has their default kind of preset in terms of slower movement speeds for the heavy weapons, stuff like that. And then we can adjust those default settings based on each weapon instance we create. We also have to create different sets of weapons, which we haven't really thought about. I'm gonna be kind of seeing how we can make those textures on a basis where it's not gonna cost us too much money. We kind of have to probably do for the summer alpha, just have a default, just one default weapon for each weapon we create. For each type, I mean, actually. So we have one default sword, one default type of daggers, and we will just use it for everything, so we don't kind of have to focus on the textures. That's something that will be done later on. Then the thing which we also need to fix is how we will prevent people from duping. So my idea was to have a internal ID which kind of defines you. Like, let's say you have a specific weapon, you can have multiple instances of that weapon. So you have the internal ID, which will show you the type of weapon, if that makes any sense. And then once the game creates a new one and it drops to you, it's the same weapon, right? It will get a item ID. So it will show you, okay, this is the 4th time this weapon has been released in the map. If they try to dupe it and it becomes like, yeah, you have 2 versions of the 4th weapon, well, the system will be like, yo, this is not possible, and it will delete one of the versions. And that's how I see it now. I don't know how we will make it work. Damage types. I'm quickly gonna go over those because they might change in the future, but the names are probably gonna stay the same, but how we will implement them based on balancing is probably gonna change. Starting with kinetic damage. This is the standard damage you do, the white damage in many games. That's the default type. Then we have shadow damage linked to Turzen, which is focused on damage over time and blinding enemies, kind of. So keep in mind, I'm just gonna repeat this one more time, this is not set. So the way we're probably going to implement this is when you go to Turzen, you're probably going to be effective against specific enemies with that shadow type. And also when you get a loot drop in that realm, it has probably a higher chance of dropping with like a shadow damage type. Frost. Okay, so Frost is for Scion, kind of slowing enemies as well. Freezing them perhaps. We need to see what's going to be possible during balance. Solar. Okay, so these weapons do fire damage and kind of do bursts of damage. And they're linked to Castamir. Arcane damage. So this is linked to more area of effect damage and doing spells. Nature damage is linked to Lador, which is mainly a healing type, but can also do like the damage over time effects, just like the shadow damage. Then Earth is high impact, linked to Manichaelia. It has a high impact damage and also it increases your knockback on enemies. Then the last damage type, which I'm really excited for, is Radiant. Okay, if you play Destiny, it's not going to be the same, but kind of the same. It's linked to Religia, and we kind of want to make it a damage type that will inspire players. So for example, maybe if you're with different realm mates near you, they will receive a damage buff or something along those lines, maybe a little bit of healing. It's gonna be a bit difficult. We need to make sure it's not gonna be too overpowered and it has some other distinguishing aspects than the nature type, because we don't want to make it too similar to each other. Then weapon rarities. Okay, so we have default common, uncommon, rare, which we will probably stop at during the alpha phase, because we're probably aiming to only get to level 15. So you're probably gonna run around with the shittier weapons. We'll obviously have some legendaries in the works, so which you can test, but normally if the game would release, you would not be able to get those weapons at level 15. So then we have legendary. Like I said, we kind of aim to have people run around with mainly legendary gear and then have one chosen weapon or armor piece. So the chosen weapon type is the exotics in Destiny. So it's a special weapon. We can only have one weapon or armor piece which is chosen equipped at a time. We want to prevent people from switching weapons during combat. So we will lock the hotbar to one weapon in the hotbar at all. And then when you switch weapons, because you're allowed to switch weapons, there is gonna be a weapon swap delay. So if you're hacking with your sword and you switch to a bow, gonna have to wait a couple seconds, probably 5 seconds, because you can like quickly switch with one and use a macro or whatever and keep switching, and we don't want to have that type of gameplay. So you can switch between weapons, but you're not incentivized to do it mid-battle. So weapon levels and requirements. Obviously each weapon has a level requirement like in every game. Then the weapon leveling system is gonna be similar to Destiny again. So we're not 100% out on how we want to implement it. We want to work with a similar system like the red borders, where you kind of have to get 5 variants of the same weapon with a red border to be able to like bring them into a gun vendor, a weapon vendor in our case, and then you can kind of craft your own version of that weapon, and then you can level the weapon. Depending on what the level your weapon is, you can slot in different type of perks that you have unlocked by doing stuff in the world, and then you can make your own variants. What Destiny doesn't do is have different profiles. We want to prevent having 50 versions with different perks of the same weapon in your bank. You can have one weapon. Once you can craft it, you can unlock different slots where you can choose different perks. So you can have like, for example, 3 slots, 3 completely different perk variations. It's the same weapon and you can switch between them. So you want to do PvP, okay, you take these perks, you switch it up, okay, let's go play. Then you want to play PvE, you need specifically this and this and this, okay, you switch it and you can play. So depending on how much higher your level weapon is, you can have more perk slots. I like those switch slots. Okay, so the perk system. To begin, we have two types of perks. We have an active type and a passive type. So think about with the active type, something where you, for example, need to damage 3 different enemies. And once you do, you get a 20%, or that's maybe a bit much, but a 10% damage increase, which you actually have to actively do something to maintain that buff. Then a passive perk is just you need to hold the weapon and you will get it. So for example, a 20% speed increase, like movement speed increase when you're holding this weapon. Something simple like that. Now, depending on what rarity your weapon is, you will have a different amount of perk slots. And then with the chosen type of weapon, you will have an extra perk slot. And you can decide how many active and passive perks you want. So for example, currently we have set that when you have a chosen weapon, you have 3 perk slots, and you can choose if you want to do 2 active and 1 passive, 3 actives, 2 passives and 1 active. Like, you can decide what perks you have when the weapon is not craftable. So when you just get a drop, you also have a little bit of customization, but you cannot choose how many active and how many passive perks you have. It's predetermined. And then you can choose in those segments what perks you kind of want to have, depending on the drop. Weapon specialization. So this is a really nice system, which we kind of took an inspiration from New World, but we want to do it a little bit in a different way. So each weapon type, so I'm talking about swords, daggers, bows, crossbows, those types, will have a specialization. You can choose one at a time. So you can choose the swords, right? And then you can level up that specialization level, which is not the same as your weapon level, by the way. And then you can get other different types of bonuses, so maybe your speed increases or whatever. But we don't want to lock people into a specific way of playing. So if you really like your sword and your specialization level is at max level, nice. Okay, you can switch to anything else. You can maximize all of those specializations, each weapon type. The only thing is you can change them only a couple times a day. So while this may change, my idea is, so you have your specialty type is selected on swords. You want to change to bows. Okay, that's fine. So you change, but now you need to wait 3 hours before you can change again. Then the second time you change, it's going to be probably 12 hours. Third time, it's going to be 24 hours. Once you reach that threshold, it's going to reset and you can have the same thing, right? Because we want to prevent people from constantly switching. You kind of have to choose a type, stick with it. If you don't like it, you have the possibility of changing. If you want to maximize everything, want to change the leaderboard, you get max level and everything. But we don't want people to oh yeah, now I'm using sword, now I'm using bow, blah blah blah, switching between them every 5 seconds. That's not really what we want. Okay, so lastly, weapon skins. Simple system, each weapon will have an ornament slot. So when you have the weapon type swords, for example, we will release some free and some paid cosmetic sword skins, and then you can slot them in ornament slots. So obviously you cannot slot in a bow ornament in a sword, yeah, so that makes sense. It's a simple system. We are also debating on if you want to actually make each texture ornamentable. I don't know if it's a word, but meaning basically, oh, you have this level 1 shit sword, but you really like the skin of it. You can use an ornament, get the skin, and then now you have this skin and you can put it on all of the weapons that you want in that category type. That would also be a good way to increase revenue, but I don't really know how feasible it is. It's something we need to discuss, but at least the ornament system will probably stay similar. This was the weapon system designing video. I mean, it's a lot of information. During the meeting when I was pitching it, we talked for 3 hours, so I know it might be a bit much, and I'm so sad in a way that I cannot really show you what my vision is, and I hope that within the coming months I can actually make a video and actually show what we have created and what the difference is between this video and actually how we implement it into the game. Because now stuff is moving faster, which is nice in a way, because I felt personally that the project wasn't moving in the right direction when we were focusing on the sister company. So stay tuned for more information, and don't forget, never giving up. The only way to success is up. Holy shit, I nailed it from the first try. Please give me an applause. Monster, sponsor me, don't forget.